Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I'll show how to sew this beautiful shirt. I also have a video about these high-waisted wide leg pants. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Let's start! As I usually mention at the beginning of my every sewing video, I pre-washed and ironed the fabric, and then started to cut the pieces out of it. We need to cut out 2 front and 2 back pieces, 4 bodice facings and 2 neckline facing parts, 2 front and 2 back sleeve pieces, 2 sleeve cuffs. Don't mind the pants pieces in the video, I cut them all out at the same time with the shirt ones. We'll also need to strengthen each of our facings pieces with a light fusible interfacing. Strengthen one of the neckline facings with a fusible bias tape. Then do the same with 2 of the bodice facings like I show in the video. Let's move on to the darts. There are 2 of them in this shirt. First, I transfer them to the fabric. Then pin their sides together and then secure it carefully with hand stitches, exactly matching the marker lines I made earlier. I start machine stitching at the dart's wide end and gradually move to its top. I stop stitching at the dart's top, rotate the fabric and stitch a couple of centimeters back, thus fastening off a thread. I remove hand stitches and other extra threads. Press the darts flat and then iron them upwards. I use special sewing pads for that. I use a 1 cm wide strip of cardboard to draw a line with an erasable marker at the body's front part's lower edge. Then tuck this edge to the wrong side towards the line and press. Roll the edge inward once again and press. Secure it with pins. Make a line of machine stitches 1 mm off the rolled edge. Iron the seam. Draw a line 1.5 cm off the back's lower edge. Roll and iron this edge twice, like we did before with the front part's lower edges. Pin the side seams together, right sides inside. Wrap the back's lower edge around the front swan, like I show in the video. Stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Hem the edges with an overlock. Press the seams flat and then iron the seam allowances to the back. Secure the back's lower edge with pins. Make a line of machine stitches 1 mm off the rolled edge. Iron the seam. Pin the sleeves front and back pieces together, right sides inside, and stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Hem the edges with an overlock. Press the seams flat and then iron the seam allowances to the sleeve's front side. Then make 2 parallel lines of long stitches at the sleeve's bottom, 8 and 4 mm off the edge. Stitch at the right side. I didn't stitch all the way around but divided it in 2 separate lines of stitches, at the sleeve's front and back parts. This helped me a lot when making the gathers the needed length. I secured the stitching at one of its ends and then pulled by the upper threads at the opposite side. The gather lengths were 11.7 cm and 16.7 cm for the front and back sleeves parts correspondingly. I checked the needed length with a measuring tape, then secured the thread with some knots. To make a sleeve scarf, I draw a line 2 cm off one of its long edges. Then fold it by half, round sides inside and press. After that, I turn one edge to the previously made line and press again. Pin the cuff's short edges together, right sides inside. Stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Iron the seam flat and then iron it open. Pin the cuff's non-folded edge to the sleeve, connecting the marks. Stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Iron the seam flat and then iron the seam allowance to the cuff. Pin the cuff's folded edge to the sleeve, thus closing the previously made seam by 1 or 2 mm. Then secure it with hand stitches, removing the pins. My cuff seemed too wide for my taste, so I made it thinner. Stitch in the ditch all the way round. Hide the excess threads. Iron the cuff. Pin a sleeve into an armhole using the marks we made at the cutting step. Each sleeve has markings on it telling us which side of it should be connected to the front and to the back of the bodice. Stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Hem the edges with an overlock. Press the seams flat and then turn the seam allowances to the sleeve. Repeat for the second sleeve. Pin 3 facing parts together, right sides inside, like it is shown in the video. Stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seams flat, open the seam allowances and press again. Repeat for the other 3 of them. Pin the facing that is strengthened with a bias tape to the shirt using marks all the way round, from bottom to the neckline and to bottom again. The bias tape is now at the free edge. Stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Press the seam flat and then iron it to the facing. Take the second facing, that it be an inner one, and roll its concave edge to the wrong side by 1 cm. Press. Pin its non-folded edge to the first facing and stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance. Pay special attention to the facing's bottom. Bend the seam allowance of the inner facing aside. Pin the short bottom edges together and stitch, making a nice flowing line. Cut the facing's seam allowance off by 5 mm. Remove the excess fabric at the corners as it is shown in the video. Cut the shirt's neckline seam allowance several times. This will also help us when turning the facing out. Turn the facing out and make its edges neat and its corners sharp with your fingers and a thick needle. Press. Pin the facing's folded edge to the shirt, thus closing the previously made seam by 1 or 2 mm. Then secure it with hand stitches, removing the pins. Stitch in the ditch. Hide the excess threads. Press. Okay, let's move on to the buttons. I transferred the buttonhole and button marks to the bodice's right and left button stands correspondingly. I cut the pattern's seam allowance off for convenience. As usual, I used a special foot to make the buttonholes. Then I secured and hid all extra threads inside the fabric layers. I also like to press the freshly made buttonholes with an iron. Then I cut the buttonholes through. Then I sewed on 3 buttons. And that's it! Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching! See you in my next videos! Bye!